If you only did what you felt like doing, you'd be in trouble. And you know it. That's not an insult, that's just a fact. Feelings are like the weather. They change. And if you build your life around the weather, you'll keep getting rained on. The big turning point for most people isn't learning one more trick. It's learning one simple rule. Commit to the work, not the feeling. Because the feeling will make promises it can't keep, but the work will keep promises your feelings never could. You know, we've been taught sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, that motivation is the engine. That if you can just get inspired enough, you'll finally do what needs doing. But here's what I've learned. Inspiration is a wonderful visitor, but it makes a lousy landlord. It comes and goes. Some mornings it shows up early, makes coffee and sings in the kitchen. Other mornings it doesn't even leave a note. And if you're waiting for inspiration to pay your bills, raise your kids, protect your health, build your future, then you're putting your life in the hands of a visitor. Let me tell you something simple. There are two ways to live, by impulse or by intention. Impulse says, if I feel good, I'll do it. Intention says, I decided, and I will. And the distance between those two ways of living is the distance between a life that drifts and a life that's directed. Most people don't lack ability. They lack a settled decision. They keep renegotiating with themselves every day. And you can't build a great life on daily negotiations. I used to have mornings where the bed felt like it had a magnet in it. You ever had that kind of morning, the alarm goes off and your body says, not today? And it doesn't even make a good argument. It just throws a feeling at you. Heavy, slow, uninterested. And if you're not careful, you treat that feeling like it's a vote, like it's on the committee that decides your future. But the truth is, your feelings are not qualified for that job. I remember a season in my life when I was trying to change a few things at once. I wanted to read more, work harder, and stop letting the day happen to me. I had some big plans, the kind you write down and feel proud of, for about 15 minutes. Then Tuesday showed up. Not the big conference day, not the day you get applause, just Tuesday. And Tuesday has a way of asking, are you serious or was that just talk? That particular Tuesday, I didn't feel like reading. I didn't feel like planning. I didn't feel like making the calls I knew I needed to make. I had a list, and every item on that list had a feeling attached to it, and most of those feelings were negative. So I did what a lot of people do. I started bargaining. Maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe when I feel more ready. And that's when I caught myself. I thought, if I keep letting maybe run my life, I'm going to wake up with a life built by maybe. So I made a smaller decision, and it changed the direction of my day. I said, I will do the first step, even if it's clumsy, not the whole mountain, just the first step. I opened the book, one page, then another. I made one call, then the next. I didn't suddenly become a superhero. I just stopped asking my feelings for permission. And later that day, this is the part that matters. My feelings caught up with my actions, not the other way around. My mood improved because my behavior improved. Action has a way of introducing you to motivation. The child says, I don't feel like it. And you don't blame a child for saying that. That's the language of childhood. But here's a tough question. How long are you going to talk like a child? Because the adult says something different. The adult says, I made a promise. The adult says, this is who I am now. The adult says, it's time. Maturity is not a number. Maturity is a decision. I will do what needs to be done, whether I feel like it or not. Now, I'm not telling you to pretend you don't have feelings. That's not wisdom. That's foolishness. Feelings are real. Fatigue is real. Discouragement is real. Disappointment is real. But listen closely. Real does not mean rightful. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it deserves to run the show. You can feel tired and still show up. You can feel nervous and still speak. You can feel uncertain and still take the next step. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something else is more important than the fear. And the cost of following feelings is almost never paid all at once. That's what makes it so sneaky. It's not like you skip one workout and the doctor calls you that afternoon. It's not like you skip one chapter and suddenly you're uneducated. It's not like you avoid one hard conversation and your marriage collapses that night. No, it's quieter than that. It's the slow drift, the slow stacking of little choices that don't look dangerous in the moment. And then one day you look back and you say, how did I end up here? You know what regret feels like? Regret isn't usually dramatic. Regret is subtle. Regret is the moment you realize you had time, you had chances, you had people who cared, you had books you could have read, you had skills you could have learned, and you traded it for being not in the mood. That's a painful trade, and it's a trade you can stop making starting now, because the future is not something you stumble into. The future is something you build. So let's get practical, because philosophy is nice, but it has to hit the ground. How do you work when the feeling isn't there? How do you do the right thing when you don't want to? Here's what I've learned. You don't rely on impulse. You rely on principle. Principles don't change with your mood. Principles don't care if it's raining. And when you line your life up with principles, you start winning a different kind of victory, the victory of consistency. Feelings are influenced by everything. Sleep, food, stress, the way someone spoke to you, the price of gas, the news, the look on somebody's face. If your plan depends on that, then you don't have a plan. You have a wish. And wishes are lovely, but they are weak. A plan is what you do when you're not in the mood. A plan is what you do when you're tired. A plan is what you do when you're irritated. A plan is what you do when nobody is clapping. Let me tell you a story I've always liked because it's so plain it's almost funny. The farmer doesn't get up and say, well, I'll plant the corn when I feel inspired. He doesn't walk out onto the porch, look at the fields and say, you know, I'm just not in the mood for planting today. If he did that, we'd all be in trouble. The farmer has something better than feelings. He has seasons. He has timing. He knows there's a time to plow, a time to plant, a time to cultivate, and a time to harvest. And he doesn't argue with those times. He works with them. Now, you may not have corn, but you do have seasons. There's a season to learn, a season to build your skill, a season to save money, a season to repair relationships, a season to work extra when you're young and strong and full of possibility. And if you miss a season, you don't get to vote on the consequence. The law of harvest doesn't care about your mood. If you don't plant, you don't harvest. It's not mean. It's not personal. It's simply fair. So here's the correction I'd give you if you were sitting across from me at the kitchen table. You're not wrong for having off days. You're human. You're not wrong for feeling tired. You're alive. You're not wrong for feeling discouraged. You're paying attention. The mistake is letting that feeling become the decision. Don't negotiate with weakness. Weakness is a terrible negotiator. It always wants more. Sleep a little more. Scroll a little more. Wait a little more. And then it smiles and says, you can always start tomorrow, and tomorrow has become the most crowded day of the year. Everybody starts tomorrow. You've got to learn a certain kind of inner language. When your feelings say, not today. Your commitment says, watch me. When your feelings say, this is too hard. Your commitment says, this is how I grow. When your feelings say, I'm not ready, your commitment says, ready comes after I begin. Don't give your feelings a vote on your future. Let them come along for the ride if they want to, but don't let them drive. Now, I'm a big believer in small daily disciplines, not because they sound noble, but because they work. The big breakthroughs are made of small, ordinary actions done over a long time. 10 pages a day. That doesn't sound like much, does it? But 10 pages a day is 3,650 pages a year. That's a library. That's a different mind. 5 calls a day, 5 conversations, 5 attempts. It doesn't sound glamorous, but it can change your income. Saving a little money regularly doesn't sound exciting, but it changes your stress level, and stress level changes your life. A short walk every day doesn't look heroic, but it changes your body, and your body changes your mood, and your mood changes your relationships. And here's the part people don't like to hear, but it's the truth. Everything that is easy to do is also easy not to do. Easy is dangerous, because easy gives you an excuse. It's only 10 pages. Yes, and that's why you skip it. It's only a short walk. Yes, and that's why you skip it. It's only 1 call. Yes, And that's why you skip it. And then 5 years later, you say, how come nothing changed? It's because you kept choosing the ease of not doing it. The easy choices cost you. Not today, but later. The price always shows up. So let me ask you a question that I hope sticks in your mind. What would happen if you started keeping the promises you make to yourself, not the promises you make to your boss, because you'll usually keep those, not the promises you make to other people, because you don't want to look bad. I mean the private promises. The ones you whisper to yourself when you're alone. I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to study, I'm going to start the business, I'm going to fix my attitude, I'm going to be more patient. What would happen if you took those promises seriously? You'd build self-respect, and self-respect is a foundation. It holds up everything else. Now, discipline matters, but discipline is not just a word you put on a poster. Discipline is a practice at 7:15 on a rainy morning when the bed is warm and the floor is cold. Discipline is what you do when you'd rather do something else. So let's make it real. Commitment isn't a slogan. Commitment is a decision plus a schedule. If it isn't on the calendar, it's a fantasy. If it isn't measurable, it's a hope. You don't need more hype. You need a plan you can live with. One of the best decisions you can make is to raise your personal standards. Not your hopes, standards. Hope is wonderful, but standards are what you live by. Standards say, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, this is what I allow, this is what I won't allow. And the day you raise your standards, life starts to change. Not because the world suddenly becomes nicer, but because you stop agreeing to live below your potential. I remember the moment I started to understand that standards are personal. Nobody can do this for you. Somebody can encourage you, teach you, warn you, even love you, but they can't set your standards. That's private, that's internal, that's the line you draw. It's the moment you say, I'm not that kind of person anymore. Not because you're trying to be perfect. Forget perfect. Perfect is a trap. You're simply choosing a new baseline. You're saying, this is what I do now. I show up, I do the work, I keep my word. And once you decide who you are, your choices start matching that decision. So here are a few practical commitments that can save you from the mood trap. First, adopt what I call the show-up rule. Even on your worst day, you report for duty. That doesn't mean you do the full, heroic version of the work every time. It means you show up. You keep the appointment with your future. Because the habit is more important than the heroic moment. If you keep the habit, strength will come. But if you keep skipping, weakness will grow. Second, create a minimum day. This is one of the smartest things you can do because it stops the all or nothing thinking on low energy days. You do the minimum. 1 page, 1 call, 10 minutes, 1 mile, 1 paragraph, 1 small act of progress. You know why? Because a minimum day protects the streak. It keeps your identity intact. It tells your mind, we're the kind of person who doesn't break the chain, and most of the time after you do the minimum, you'll do more. But even if you don't, you won that day. You kept the agreement. Third, prepare the night before. Because mornings are not the time for negotiation. Mornings are when your willpower is still half asleep. Lay out the clothes. Set the materials on the table. Write the top 3 actions on a card. Remove the friction. You want the right choice to be the easy choice. People talk about how to get more disciplined. Sometimes the answer is not trying harder. It's arranging your life smarter. Fourth, track it. Not because you want to become obsessed with numbers, but because what gets measured improves. A simple checklist. A calendar with an X on the days you did the work. A notebook where you write down what you practiced. When you track it, you can't lie to yourself as easily. And self-deception is the beginning of failure. The numbers are not there to shame you. They're there to teach you. They show you patterns. They show you where you drift. They show you where you're strong. Fifth, build some form of accountability. Not the kind that makes you feel trapped, but the kind that keeps you honest. A friend, a coach, a group, someone you report to. Some people don't like accountability because it feels like pressure. But here's the truth. Life already has pressure. Bills are pressure. Time is pressure. Health is pressure. The question is, which pressure will you choose? The pressure of discipline or the pressure of regret? One builds you, one breaks you. Now, let me add something that's often ignored. Your environment matters. Your associations matter. If you keep hanging around people who make excuses, you'll start collecting excuses like souvenirs. If you keep listening to nonsense all day, your mind will start thinking nonsense is normal. If you spend your time with people who talk big and live small, it'll start to sound reasonable, and reasonable is often the enemy of great. Choose what you feed your mind. Choose what conversations you allow. Choose what you watch and what you repeat, because you become like what you keep around you. This isn't complicated. If you want to fly with eagles, you can't spend your days scratching with chickens. And I don't say that to insult anybody. I say it to remind you, you get to choose. You might not get to choose your relatives, but you get to choose your running partners in life. You get to choose who influences you. And once you start putting systems in place, show up rule, minimum day, preparation, tracking, accountability, something interesting happens. You stop asking, do I feel like it? Because the schedule answers for you. And that's freedom. People think commitment is a prison. It's not. Commitment is a door. It takes you out of the cage of your moods. Now let's go a little further, because eventually this stops being about getting more done. This becomes about who you become. Every day you keep your word, you build a reputation with yourself. And self-trust is one of the most valuable things you can have. If you don't trust yourself, everything is harder. You second guess, you hesitate, you start and stop. But if you trust yourself, if you know you do what you say you'll do, then you walk differently, you speak differently. You're not trying to prove something to the world. You're simply living from a settled place. You know what's powerful? Quiet confidence, not loud confidence. Quiet confidence comes from keeping promises in private. It comes from doing the work when nobody's watching. It comes from showing up on the days you could have easily made an excuse. And that kind of confidence can't be faked. It doesn't come from talking. It comes from doing. Let me give you a simple comparison that might help. Two people start out in the same town. Similar talent, similar background, similar opportunity. One of them follows feelings. When they feel good, they're productive. When they don't, they disappear. Their effort looks like a flashlight with dying batteries, bright for a moment, then dim, then off. The other person commits to the work. Not perfectly. They still have tough days. They still get tired, but they do the minimum. They keep the rhythm. They stay in the game. A year goes by. Not much looks different to the casual observer. That's why people quit early. They say this isn't working, but they're judging too soon. 5 years goes by, and now you can see it. One person has a stack of started projects and a story for every one of them. The other has progress, skill, results, and a stronger mind. 10 years goes by, and it looks like two different lives. Same talent, different habits. Same potential, different standards. The gap wasn't created by one big decision. It was created by 1,000 small decisions to do the work when the feeling wasn't there. And now we get to one of the most important truths I can give you. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Discipline is usually just a little discomfort today. Getting up when you'd rather sleep, studying when you'd rather watch something mindless, making the call when you'd rather avoid rejection, having the conversation when you'd rather stay silent. It's small, but it's sharp. Regret is heavier, and it lasts longer. Regret is looking back and realizing that the price you refused to pay was actually the cheapest price. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive it becomes. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, like a friend who wants your life to work. You don't need a new personality. You need a new practice. You don't need to feel like a champion first. You need to act like a champion, and the feeling will follow. Your feelings are followers. So here's the question I would put in front of you, and I'd let it hang there for a moment. What's one promise you're going to keep starting today? Not 10 promises, one. What's one piece of work you've been postponing because you've been waiting to feel right? Is it your health? Then start small, but start. Is it your income? Then make the call, learn the skill, show up where the opportunities are. Is it your education? Then open the book. Is it your relationship? Then say the kind word, take the responsibility, do the hard thing with a soft voice. And if you're thinking, but what if I fail? Let me tell you what I've learned. Failure is not the big tragedy. The big tragedy is quitting. Failure can teach you. Quitting teaches you that you can't be trusted. Failure says, try again with a better method. Quitting says, go back to sleep. So yes, you might stumble. Fine, stumble forward. Don't use the possibility of imperfection as an excuse for inaction. A messy start beats a perfect delay. Here's another truth. You don't have to love the work to do the work. Love often arrives after results. Pride arrives after progress. Confidence arrives after repetition. People say, if I could just get motivated. Motivation is not something you wait for. Motivation is something you generate by movement. Start moving, and your mind will start cooperating. Sit still, and your mind will start producing reasons to stay still. That's how it works. Now, I want you to see something that might lift the weight off your shoulders. Commitment is not a sentence to misery. It's a path to freedom. When you commit to the work, you stop being controlled by every passing emotion. You stop being controlled by every opinion. You stop being controlled by the need to be comfortable. And comfort is a poor life goal. Comfort makes a nice vacation, but it makes a lousy destination. If you're waiting for life to get easier before you get serious, I've got news for you. Life is not going to sign that contract. Life is going to keep handing you days that require your best. And the good news is, you can become the kind of person who handles those days. Not by wishing, but by working. Not by hoping, but by practicing. Not by waiting to feel strong, but by doing the things that make you strong. So commit to the work on the days you feel good. That's easy. But more importantly, commit to the work on the days you don't. Commit when it's boring. Commit when it's slow. Commit when you're not seeing results yet. Commit when nobody is cheering, because that's where the growth is. That's where character is built. That's where your future is being written quietly, steadily, line by line. And let me leave you with something you can carry into tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off and your feelings start talking. Let your feelings ride in the back seat. Don't let them drive. You can listen to them. You can acknowledge them. You can say, I hear you. But then you put your hands on the wheel and you say, we're going anyway. Because your life is too valuable to be led by a mood. Your family is too important. Your talent is too precious. Your time is too short. Do the work. Do it when you're inspired and do it when you're not. Do it when it's convenient and do it when it's not. Do it until keeping your word feels normal. And one day you'll look back and you won't just see results, you'll see a stronger person staring back at you, someone you can respect. And that, my friend, is a success no feeling can ever give you.